Hello, my name is Paul Johannesson, and I'm going to present this discussion paper written by my colleague Birger Andersson and me. It's about ontological issues for money. We are going to look mainly into identity issues about money, here illustrated by the saying that money doesn't smell. Here's a presentation outline. We will first look at an existing ontology of money as proposed by Glenda Amaral and others. Inspired by this, we will look upon money at three ontological levels. We will then more in general look at various notions of identity and finally ask some questions about the identity of money. Well, here is the reference ontology of money. As you can see, it's based here on UFO, the Unified Foundational Ontology. A key class here is the one of monetary object type. It's types of objects that are considered money according to the status function description. And these status function descriptions, they specify various norms and rules that tell and how some social object is to be used and how it can work. It's possible to distinguish between different kinds of money, commodity money, for example, shells and metals. We have commodity-based money, like coins and banknotes, which are backed by some commodity. And we finally have fiat money, also coins, banknotes, bank deposits, which are not backed by anything else, only by the declaration of some state, typically. Then we have monetary objects that are instances of monetary object types. This ontology has been further developed and refined, and here's one extension to it that makes a distinction between monetary object and monetary credit. So here money represents a credit-to-debt relation between some state, a monetary authority, and some agent, either owing an electronic monetary creditor holding control of some monetary object. Inspired by this ontology, we have suggested here to look at money on three different ontological levels, physical, informational, and social levels. Here we have the physical level containing objects that make up the physical world, humans, pieces of paper, magnetic areas on disks, and so on. We have the social level containing objects that are parts of society, citizens, states, organizations, and also relationships between these objects, for example, obligations and social debts. In between, we have the informational level that contains information about objects in the other levels. And as we are primarily interested in economic information, we have called these ones in this figure for accounts. Okay, looking now a bit more carefully at money at these different levels, we suggest that money can be considered as information about some social debt. This information can be kept in accounts or encoded on paper, different forms of money. And this economic information about debts, it's kept in the informational level. The information can be tightly coupled to objects such as information carriers in the physical level, for example, to coins or banknotes. But there is also more loosely coupled information about social debt that can be stored and copied on a multitude of carriers. In the figure, we have indicated this by drawing two lines from person B's social debt to two separate accounts. Consequences of this is that if information in one account is lost for some reason, then it can be recreated from a copy in another location. And this can be contrasted with the tightly coupled information as we have drawn it on the physical level. We may think of the round symbol here as a banknote, and here all information about the social debt is kept in one place, namely in that banknote. We indicate this by drawing lines from all locations where the information is kept in the information level, converging into one place on the physical level. Should the banknote be destroyed, then there's no way to recreate this particular note again, or the social debt that it represents. Okay, now moving on to questions of identity. There are three common sets of questions that philosophers often think about when they address identity. First, we have individuation, which is about determining whether an existing object X is or is not identical to an existing object Y. For example, if we have some lump of metal and a statue made of that lump, do we have can we individuate, distinguish between two different objects here, or is there only one object? Another set of questions have to do with individual essence, and that is to say what is essential to some object of a kind being just that individual it is. Under what hypothetical conditions would we say that that individual still would exist? For example, if we have a crowd of people, each one clearly has some individual essence, could be the memory or the brain or the soul of that person, and it cannot be changed, and we would still say that it is the same person that exists. But if we, on the other hand, would have had a heap of screws, they would be indistinguishable from each other. They would not have any individual essence. They would all be, so to say, just the same ones. Finally, we have questions about identity over time, about determining whether an object at one time is identical to an object at another time. And the classical example here is the ship of Theseus. If a few planks would be replaced, would we still say that it is the same ship? Probably. If half of the planks would be replaced, is it still the same ship? If all of the planks are replaced, is it still this same ship of Theseus? So it is about identity over time and if and how we can determine that. Now, moving on then to money and identity, we can first ask if physical money can be individuated, or rather the carriers on the physical level, can they be individuated? Well, probably yes, as any other physical objects can be individuated. What about this physical money? Does it have an individual essence? It doesn't seem so for coins. But what about banknotes? If they have a serial number, would that suffice to give them some kind of individual essence? And what about identifying physical money over time? Here we're not even sure that there really is any ontological issue involved here, and it shouldn't be problematic in a particular sense here. Maybe it's rather that we have some pragmatic issue here. In practice, we cannot identify over time coins, but we can identify banknotes over time because they have a serial number. If we look at the information level at electronic money accounts, can they be individuated? Do they have some individual essence? Can they be identified over time? In particular, if we have accounts, what is the role of the account number, the identifier? How does that help for answering these questions? And what about cryptocurrencies, such as Bitcoin? In Bitcoin, there is indeed some token that represents a Bitcoin or a subdivision thereof. So we have some means for identifying Bitcoins over time. But would it be possible to design a scheme for electronic money that didn't have this possibility of identification over time? And would this really be some ontological question, or is it just a pragmatic issue? And if we then finally think about money as social debt, can they be individuated, have an individual essence, and be identified over time? So what is the identity principle for a debt? Can a debt remain the same even if the lender or borrower change? More specifically, can you inherit a debt? Then clearly maybe both the lender and the borrower will change. Would it still be possible to say that it is the same debt, or is it a new debt based on the previous one? So these were a number of questions about money and identity, and thank you very much for your attention, and please feel free to answer any of the questions we have suggested here. Thank you.